Karen aimed a gun at my wife. Seconds later, my Navy SEAL team took her down. Some wars begin with politics. Others begin with silence. Mine started with roses and a woman who believed she ruled our entire street. My name is Malik Foster, 38 years old, retired Navy SEAL, now working logistics for a defense contractor. After 16 years of operations in the harshest places on earth, I chose Oak Ridge Meadows to build a quiet life. Peace, privacy, somewhere my wife, Kiara, could tend her flower beds without sand in the wind. Somewhere I could forget the sound of gunfire. I didn't expect to face a loaded weapon again in my own front yard, especially not pointed at her, and certainly not held by a woman in pink Crocs and pearls. Part 1. I knew something was wrong the first time Karen Bradshaw walked onto our lawn with a clipboard and a ruler. She didn't introduce herself, didn't ask how we were settling in. She crouched down next to the rose bed my wife had just planted, measured exactly 12 inches from the edge of the fence, and made a disapproving grunt like she'd stepped in something foul. That was day 2 in Oak Ridge Meadows. Kiara looked up from the mulch with a polite smile. "Can I help you?" Karen stood, squinted. "You're 3 inches over the property line. HOA doesn't allow that." I was inside unpacking books, watching from the window. Kiara tilted her head. "There's no official HOA in this neighborhood," she said evenly. Karen's smile was tight. "Well, I represent the Civic Harmony Task Committee, which follows legacy HOA guidelines. We take pride in keeping things orderly." I stepped outside. Karen turned, eyes scanning me from boots to jawline. "Oh," she said, "you must be the veteran." "I am," I replied. "And you must be trespassing." It would have been funny if she wasn't serious. But Karen kept coming. She left typed notes in our mailbox, no postage, no signature, just bold print-like orders. "Your front lights are the wrong color temperature. The flagpole is not permitted above 6 feet. Backyard gatherings must be registered." There were no bylaws to support these. Oak Ridge Meadows had never passed a formal HOA. It was a quiet mix of families, retirees, working professionals, and a few military folks like me who just wanted peace. But Karen, she saw herself as sheriff of suburbia. My wife tried to make peace. She invited Karen over for lemonade once, offered a small bouquet from her garden. Karen refused both. "You people always try to sweeten things before you take over," she said, setting the flowers on the ground like they were a threat. Kiara stood frozen. I had never seen her cry until that night. The next escalation came over a privacy fence. Our backyard shared a property line with Karen's. When we moved in, the existing fence was warped and leaned inward, a safety hazard. Kiara wanted to replace it and add decorative lattice to grow vines. We got permits. We hired a contractor. The day they started work, Karen stormed over, phone in hand, filming herself in selfie mode like some budget town marshal. "These people are altering the aesthetics of the community without civic approval," she shouted to the screen. "They've refused all mediation." She threw a crumpled letter onto our driveway. It read, effective immediately: "You are fined $850 by the Oak Ridge Civic Harmony Committee." She wrote that letter on Stolen County letterhead. I made a call that night. Not to the police, not to the county. I called a man named Juno. We served together in DevGru SEAL Team 6. We'd been through fire, flood, and insurgency. I trusted him more than any sheriff. He answered on the first ring. "Hey, LT," he said. "Long time. I've got a situation." I said, unarmed. "For now." "You want a recon detail?" "No. Just eyes. For 2 weeks." I watched. Karen's behavior grew stranger. She installed 3 cameras facing our house, 2 on her porch, 1 mounted in a tree. She followed Kiara to the grocery store once. Another time, she stood at the edge of our lawn for 20 minutes, arms crossed, staring silently as Kiara watered her lavender plants. But we didn't react. Not yet. It was on a Sunday afternoon that the line finally snapped. Kiara was out front pruning roses. I was in the garage, tightening bolts on the new fence gate. I heard yelling, high-pitched, unhinged. Then a sound I will never forget. The cold, mechanical snap of a handgun slide chambering around. I dropped my wrench, ran, and there she was. Karen Bradshaw, HOA Queen of Oak Ridge, standing 10 feet from my wife, holding a silver pistol, finger on the trigger. "You people don't get to take over our block," she screamed. "Back up!" Now Kiara had her hands raised, eyes wide with disbelief. Her lips trembled, but she stood her ground. I didn't hesitate. I tapped the comms in my watch. Eagle down, stack in, lethal threat confirmed. It only took 6 seconds. 6 seconds before the perimeter team breached. 3 of them. Full tactical gear exterior camo, suppressed M4s, body cams rolling. They emerged from the greenbelt 2 houses down, having been stationed there for 2 days. Karen didn't even hear them coming. "Drop the weapon." Juno's voice barked like thunder. Karen spun, startled but didn't lower the gun. A red laser dot landed on her chest. "I'm a community officer," she shrieked. "I have rights not with a firearm pointed at a civilian," Juno said, stepping forward. "Hands on your head. Now." She hesitated. My wife didn't. With a sharp pivot, Kiara kicked the pistol out of Karen's grip. It landed in a patch of mulch with a dull thunk. Karen screamed again. Then the cuffs came out. The local police showed up 7 minutes later. Too late. The SEALs had already detained Karen and cleared the weapon. It was fully loaded. Safety off. The serial number scratched. Illegally possessed. The officers took her away in stunned silence, nodding at Juno and the others with hesitant respect. One whispered to me, "Didn't know y'all rolled that deep." "We don't," I said, "unless we're provoked." That night, I stood on the porch with Kiara. The roses were still upright, a few petals torn from the scuffle. "Are you okay?" I asked. She nodded. She thought she could scare us quiet. "People like her always do," I said. But she pointed a gun. "Malik." "I know," I whispered. "And now the world will point a camera." The footage from Juno's body cam leaked the next day. The headline hit every major network by evening. Suburban HOA leader pulls gun on veteran's wife, gets taken down by off-duty SEALs. The footage showed everything. Karen's face, the gun, Kiara's calm, the takedown. The country exploded. Part 2. They say the internet doesn't forget. I learned it also doesn't wait. By sunrise the next morning, I woke up to 274 missed calls. My phone buzzed so hard it slipped off the nightstand. My wife's inbox had crashed. Our doorbell rang twice before 7 a.m. The footage was out, uncut, unfiltered, realer than any news anchor could narrate. Juno's body cam, synced with a perimeter cam feed, showed the whole confrontation. Karen pointing a silver pistol at my wife, her voice screeching about "you people" and taking back the neighborhood. My call for tactical response. The team breaching, the gun being disarmed, Karen screaming. It spread like a wildfire laced with gasoline. I knew it went viral when my former commanding officer from Virginia Beach sent me a one-line text. "The whole damn base just watched your wife make a clean disarm." Within 24 hours, the video hit 19.4 million views on X. By 48 hours, CNN, MSNBC, Fox, and BBC World all had commentary. And by the end of the week, it wasn't just about Karen anymore. It was about America. And what happens when hate hides behind a garden fence? Karen's defenders tried to emerge. A Facebook group titled "Stand with Suburban Order" popped up. Someone started a GoFundMe for her legal defense and claimed she was provoked by criminal intimidation. It barely raised $32 before getting shut down for fraudulent activity. Why? Because 5 different camera angles, body cam, neighbor porch cams, and yes, Kiara's own phone had captured Karen drawing first, yelling first, threatening first. We didn't edit anything. We didn't need to. The raw footage showed Karen for what she was, an unstable woman with delusions of authority, unlicensed power, and a hatred she could no longer hide. Meanwhile, Kiara became something of a national symbol. News outlets requested interviews. Veteran's wife holds her ground under fire, suburban heroine, defies gun-wielding HOA queen, calm in the crosshairs. We declined every live segment. Instead, she wrote an op-ed for the Washington Post titled, "I Planted Flowers." She pointed a gun. It went viral. Her words weren't angry, they were honest, thoughtful, devastating. I didn't move into Oak Ridge Meadows to fight. I moved to heal. But when a woman aims a gun at you because your skin doesn't match her idea of order, you realize something deeper is broken. She didn't just see me as a neighbor, she saw me as a threat to her fiction of control. We are not invading your neighborhood. We are part of it. We are not anomalies. We are Americans. That piece opened floodgates. Hundreds, then thousands of emails poured in. Black families across the country sharing stories of harassment, fines, accusations, fake citations, even property sabotage from self-proclaimed watchdog neighbors. An older couple from Arizona wrote, "They told us our door was too bold in color. We painted it beige." The next week, they threw paint on our mailbox. A single mother in Texas wrote, "I was fined $150 for a toy on the lawn. My white neighbor had 10. She got a friendly reminder." A Latino veteran in New Jersey shared, "They told me my flag was upside down. I served 20 years. I buried friends under that flag." These weren't isolated incidents. They were a pattern, and Karen had become the face of it. Local authorities had no choice but to act. Within 72 hours of the video's spread, Karen was charged with felony assault with a deadly weapon, terroristic threats, brandishing a firearm without a permit, impersonation of a civic officer, stalking based on camera footage and community complaints. The sheriff's department held a press conference, but the most powerful moment came when the mayor stepped up to the mic. "We failed to stop her earlier. For that, we are ashamed. But no one should be above accountability because they carry a clipboard instead of a badge. And no one should feel unsafe for planting roses in their own yard." Karen's mugshot taken without makeup, pearls, or pretense circulated faster than her HOA memos ever did. The community, they turned. I expected silence, maybe polite distance, but the transformation was visceral. The elderly couple next door, who once avoided eye contact, left a plate of warm cornbread and a note. "We're sorry we didn't speak sooner." The middle school kids who used to ride by without a glance started waving, and then something unexpected happened, a neighborhood gathering, but not just any barbecue. The community planned a "we take care of our own" rally on our lawn. Over 200 people came. They brought food, signs, folding chairs. They wore t-shirts that read, "We stand with the Fosters," "Flowers, not fear," "Silence is not neutral." Juno and the team came too. No uniforms, just brothers. Marcus, one of our youngest neighbors, walked up to Kiara and said, "My mom says you're brave. I think you're superhuman." Kiara smiled. "I'm just tired of hiding." The rally was streamed live. It wasn't a protest. It was a proclamation. Kiara spoke for 10 minutes. Her closing words rippled across social media like a heartbeat. "The suburbs aren't yours to weaponize. They belong to all of us. And we're not going anywhere." In the days that followed, Karen's fake Civic Harmony Committee was disbanded by court order. She'd forged county letterhead, issued false fines to over 30 families, intimidated non-white residents with threats of eviction, faked ordinance books and noise permits, even created a fake email domain posing as a city inspector. She wasn't just a nosy neighbor. She was a fraud machine. The DA called it one of the most sustained patterns of community abuse we've ever seen. Her assets were frozen. Her concealed carry permit application filed fraudulently 6 months prior was evidence. Her cousin's printing business used for the phony letterheads was raided. And still, Karen refused to speak. Her lawyer pleaded not guilty. But in the court of public opinion, the verdict was loud and unanimous. For us, life didn't go back to normal. It moved forward. Kiara started organizing neighborhood resilience training, conflict de-escalation, civic rights, security awareness. I returned to work with my team, now consulting on domestic defense strategy. Ironically, teaching people how to recognize threats, even when they wear pearls. But one thing stayed on our lawn, a single red sign. This garden survived a loaded gun and still grew. Part 3. I used to believe that evil made noise, that you could hear it coming by the sound of boots or bullets or breaking glass. But Karen Bradshaw's evil was quiet. It crept through printer paper and fake signatures. It smiled during bake sales. It whispered at PTA meetings and sealed envelopes with no return address. And the deeper I dug, the more I realized the gun had just been the final act. The story didn't start with the weapon. It started with a pattern, and I knew how to track patterns. 2 weeks after the rally, I received a call from Agent Dubois, an old contact from Joint Task Force North, now working fraud and public corruption under DHS. I saw the footage. She said, "Impressive takedown. She got what she deserved." I said, "Not yet." Dubois replied, "Because what she did wasn't personal. It was operational." That got my attention. Operational. There's a cluster of fake HOA-related fraud rings spreading across counties, property flipping scams, racially motivated targeting. It looks petty on the surface, but it's organized. And Karen Bradshaw's name just came up in 2 other jurisdictions. She sent me a secure link. What I saw made my stomach tighten. There were 3 other neighborhoods, 3 other civic groups, 3 other women with eerily similar behavioral profiles. All had ties to Karen via real estate investment networks. One of them had even hosted Karen at a neighborhood governance summit in 2021. They weren't just gossiping over lemon bars. They were creating a template. With Dubois' help, I pulled public records, housing complaints, utility transfers, and trust deeds. What emerged was a slow-motion land grab. Here's how it worked. Harassment phase, fake HOA letters. Fines, code violations. Isolation phase, target non-white, single-parent, or elderly households. Suppression phase, camera surveillance. Anonymous complaints. Leverage phase. Offer friendly buyouts through shell corporations. Flip phase, renovate and sell at massive markup through affiliated developers. Karen's cousin ran one of the LLCs. Her niece, a notary, had signed dozens of transfer docs. Even her church was listed as a co-signer on a civic trust. It was deeper than anyone thought, and more dangerous. I took it to the sheriff, but something in his eyes told me he already suspected. He sighed. "We had noise complaints, but nothing stuck. Until your wife." "Now what?" I asked. He hesitated. "Now we bring in federal muscle, quietly. The DOJ opened a case under the Fair Housing Act, but I wasn't about to let it sit in bureaucracy. So I called in the team, not for weapons, for intel. Juno, Ortiz, and Cam showed up 2 days later. No uniforms, no patches, just quiet professionals with years of recon in hostile territory. This wasn't Kandahar or Fallujah, but it had the same scent fear enforced by power. We mapped every address tied to Karen's Civic Harmony database, found 27 properties touched by her network. In each case, a black or brown family had either sold under value or been cited with fabricated violations within 90 days of sale. And when we cross-referenced the timeline, Karen had visited each block within 72 hours of compliance visits. She wasn't just harassing us. She was a node in a much larger system. The final confirmation came when Kiara opened our mailbox. Inside was an envelope labeled Confidential Property Advisory. It claimed our home had been selected for historic realignment under neighborhood aesthetic principles. It was signed, Oak Ridge Heritage Council. There was no such council, but the seal, it matched one found on a file from a neighborhood in rural Mississippi where a Mexican-American family had been cited, fined, and forced out after months of surveillance. Same seal, same language, same Karen. I walked into the local zoning office the next morning with the envelope in hand. The clerk blinked when she saw it. "Where did you get this mailbox?" I said. "From the ghost of Jim Crow." She paled. "Sir, this letterhead is under investigation. It's linked to a forgery ring. You need to take this to the state inspector." I did more than that. I handed it to a attorney. That afternoon, I called a town meeting. Every neighbor who had ever received a fine, a fake violation, or an unsigned compliance notice came. Some thought they were alone. Others had been afraid to speak, but now the pieces connected. We showed maps, documents, ownership transfers, digital forensics. And then Kiara stood up and told them what Karen had done. Told them about the gun, about the silence, about the plan. The room fell into a hush. Then one by one, people stood and told their stories. A Pakistani-American engineer whose permit requests kept getting lost. A disabled Vietnam vet who was fined $400 for a non-conforming wheelchair ramp. A widow who was told her front porch light was too dim and creating safety concerns. It wasn't just Karen. It was a system, a quiet one. But no more once we took everything, every testimony, every forgery, every video clip, and built a 200-page dossier. We called it Operation Garden Gate. The next morning, Dubois delivered it to DHS and the DOJ. And just like that, it wasn't a suburban dispute anymore. It was a federal investigation into coordinated housing discrimination and property theft. Karen didn't just bring shame to herself. She cracked open a nest of vipers, and the feds had their boots on. As for us, we fortified not with walls, but with community. Neighbors who never spoke were now building raised garden beds together. Our street started a co-op safety committee, real community oversight. Kiara and I organized a Know Your Housing Rights workshop. Kids rode bikes past houses that once had hidden cameras, and that red sign, "This garden survived a loaded gun," and still grew. Now stood beside 20 others, each hand-painted, each with different flowers, a different family, a different story, but the same message: we're not leaving. Part 4. Karen Bradshaw always believed her power came from rules, from laminated pamphlets, from claiming she was enforcing community values. But in the end, she collapsed under the very weight of those claims because the truth didn't need permission to show up. It just needed time and a body cam. The first domino fell 2 weeks after we submitted the Operation Garden Gate dossier. At 6:15 a.m. sharp, 2 black government SUVs pulled up to the front of Karen's once pristine ranch-style home on Juniper Lane. She didn't answer the door. They didn't knock twice. The search warrant was executed by agents from the Department of Justice in Housing and Urban Development's Office of Inspector General. Not local cops, not county, federal. Juno texted me a photo from across the street. Karen stood on her porch barefoot, clutching a robe and trying to hide behind a pink coffee mug. Agents walked past her with boxes, computers, filing cabinets, a home office filled with maps, folders, and a literal corkboard with pins and strings, like a Netflix villain. Only real. Inside those boxes, investigators found over 170 fake violation notices addressed to non-white residents. A folder titled Transfer Opportunities Ideal Targets. 3 burner phones used to send anonymous complaints. A forged notary seal. An encrypted flash drive labeled Backups. WHC Wellington Heritage Council, one of her fake HOAs. But the final blow came from her own mouth. Karen, clearly unaware she was being recorded during an internal DHS interview, said these people come in loud, flashy, ruining everything we built. If the system won't fix it, someone has to. She wasn't talking about fences. She was talking about us. The interview leaked, and with it, so did Karen's credibility. Her lawyer, some hotshot civil litigator from the city, tried to spin it. She was overwhelmed, mentally unwell, concerned for public order, but no one was buying it. Public order doesn't involve drawing a gun on a woman planting roses. The mayor denounced her. The city council passed emergency legislation to formally bar any future non-chartered civic organizations from issuing community fines or notices. And the people they erupted? Local activists organized a march. Peaceful, loud. They called it the People's Block Party. Hundreds showed up. Kiara spoke on the steps of City Hall, holding one of Karen's fake compliance citations in her hand. "This is what hate looks like on paper," she said, lifting it. "Now look around you. This we are what love looks like in motion. The crowd roared. Karen's trial began on a humid Monday in early August. The courtroom was packed. National media, local press, civil rights attorneys from across the state. She was charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, felony harassment, multiple counts of housing fraud, forgery, civil rights violations under the Fair Housing Act, operating a fraudulent regulatory organization, impersonation of a public official. She pled not guilty, but the evidence was damning. Prosecutors presented body cam footage, surveillance logs, testimonies from over 40 residents, cross-county documentation linking her to 3 fraudulent property transfers, her own interview recording, and then they played the clip, the one where she said, "They'll beg to move once we tighten the leash." The courtroom fell into stunned silence. Karen kept her eyes down. Kiara testified, calm, steady. "I didn't move here to make waves. I moved here to plant roots. But this woman pulled a gun because I dared to bloom." She paused, looked at Karen, and I forgive her. But that doesn't mean I forget. I testified too, not as a SEAL, as a husband, a neighbor. She didn't just threaten my wife, she threatened the safety of every family who didn't match her fantasy of control. But we fought back with the truth. I looked at the judge, and now the truth is fighting for us. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. They returned with unanimous verdicts, guilty on all counts. When the judge read the sentence, Karen's shoulders sagged like the bones beneath them had finally snapped. 18 years in federal prison, no parole, restitution of $2, $3 million to be paid to families harmed by her fraud. The courtroom erupted not with cheers, but with tears, hugs, quiet relief. For the first time, we could breathe. Afterward, a reporter asked me what I thought of the verdict. I answered without hesitation she thought she was the law. But the law remembered who it was. Karen was taken away in shackles. No pearl, no clipboard, no committee, just a number. She didn't look back at us, and we didn't need her to. In the weeks that followed, something incredible happened. Dozens of other neighborhoods, some across the country, reached out to us. They'd seen the footage, read the op-ed, followed the case, and now they were standing up to their own Karens, filing lawsuits, forming alliances, demanding oversight of HOA abuses and predatory development. We weren't just a story anymore. We were a spark. The Department of Housing and Urban Development announced a new pilot initiative, the Foster-Bradshaw Protocol, named after our family, and the case that changed policy. It provided funding for neighborhood legal advocacy, fraud prevention training for residents, mental health support for victims of targeted harassment, background checks and registration for self-declared HOA groups. And Kiara, she was asked to consult on the program's rollout. Meanwhile, Oak Ridge Meadows bloomed again. We started the Community Commons, a shared garden, library, and gathering space. Kids painted murals on the old civic wall. Neighbors left jars of honey on porches. Someone even wrote a song based on Kiara's courtroom quote and uploaded it to Spotify. And once a month, we hold a Justice Jam, an open mic event where residents tell their stories, sing, read poetry, and remind each other we are still here and we are still growing. I sometimes glance at the fence where it all began. The roses are thicker now, blooming in vibrant reds and yellows. Kiara added lavender and rosemary for good measure. The same spot where Karen once raised a gun is now where hummingbirds hover and bees do their holy work. We kept the sign. It now reads, "This garden faced a weapon and bloomed anyway." Part 5. There's something strange about peace after war, not the absence of noise, but the absence of looking over your shoulder. The morning after Karen's sentencing, I stood on our front porch with a cup of hot coffee, and for the first time in nearly a year, I didn't scan the hedges for motion sensors. I didn't look for reflection glints from fake cameras. The only thing I noticed was the way the sunrise glowed off Kiara's flowers, and the soft hum of jazz from a neighbor's speaker. We didn't plan to lead a movement. We only wanted to live. But somehow, the fence, the flowers, the body cam footage, and a woman with a gun had done more than just expose one dangerous neighbor. They'd lifted the veil on a system of silent abuse that had gone unchallenged for too long. So after the court's verdict, after the speeches and the headlines, we got to work. Not with lawsuits, with hammers, with hands, with hope. The first project was the Reclaim Garden, the lot down the street abandoned for years. Overgrown with weeds and beer cans had once been the site of Karen's community meetings, a place where she handed out fake violations and whispered about property values. We tore it down. Literally. With the city's help and some elbow grease from Juno and Ortiz, we cleared the lot, leveled it, and built 10 raised beds for vegetables, herbs, dust, and flowers. We painted the fence with murals hands of every color holding each other. At the center of the garden, Kiara planted the first seed, a red rose, the same kind Karen once tried to destroy. Next came the neighborhood justice walk. It started as an idea Marcus had. He's the 14-year-old from next door, whose parents almost moved because of Karen's harassment. He wanted to install plaques along the sidewalk with quotes from residents who stood up. We helped him design them. Now, every few feet along the sidewalk, there are metal signs etched with truth. I thought I was alone. Then I heard her speak. Tanya S., single mom. The first letter scared me. The last one empowered me. Gordon R., Vietnam vet. They tried to uproot us, but we are trees. Kiara Foster, and one from Marcus himself. They pushed us to the edge. We pushed back with love, louder than bullets. The walk became a destination. People from outside Oak Ridge began to visit. Local schools scheduled field trips, and journalists stopped writing about us like a cautionary tale. They started calling us a model. Meanwhile, I was approached by state housing officials. They asked me to help design a training module for identifying fraud rings posing as HOAs or civic coalitions. I called it Project Gatekeeper. We trained county clerks to detect fake ordinance numbers, code enforcement officers to cross-check permit threats, real estate offices on how shell companies target vulnerable neighborhoods, and local homeowners, especially seniors, on their rights. Within 4 months, reports of fraudulent HOA activity in our region dropped by 47%. That number didn't just mean we'd exposed something, it meant we'd changed something. Back at home, Kiara was rebuilding something else: trust, not in systems, but in people. She started a porch circle every Thursday evening. Nothing fancy, no announcements, just neighbors showing up with folding chairs, lemonade, and conversation. The first few weeks, it was just 6 people, then 10, then 20. They came from every block Karen had once tried to rule. There was Mr. Dalton, the retired Marine who used to nod but never speak. Sandra, the librarian whose door was egged when she defended us on Facebook. And even the Johnsons, the couple who once silently supported Karen, who showed up with a homemade apology pie and tears in their eyes. They said, "We saw what we wanted to see. We're sorry it took this much." Kiara hugged them. That's how real change happens. Not in headlines, but in handshakes. But Karen's ghost didn't vanish overnight. One evening, we found another envelope in the mailbox. No stamp, no address. Inside, a printed quote: "Watch your back. Things can always go back to how they were." It was unsigned. I gave it to the sheriff. He looked at it and said, "Cowards always speak loudest when they know they've lost." They never traced it. But I didn't care, because this time, I wasn't alone. This time, the neighborhood answered back. A week later, every household on our block installed a flagpole. Each flew a white banner with a red rose in the center, Kiara's design. The message was simple: this is our ground. We won't be moved. As fall rolled in, we held the first Oak Ridge Community Renewal Day. There were food trucks, bounce houses, a speech by the mayor. Kiara was honored with the first annual Civic Courage Award. The plaque reads, "For standing firm, for growing beauty in the face of hate, for building peace where fear once lived." When she took the stage, the crowd fell quiet. She looked at the people, the same ones who once peered out from behind curtains, and said, "You don't need a gun to change the world. You need roots. And you need to stop apologizing for taking up space. Grow where they tried to bury you, and bloom bigger than they ever imagined." People cried. I did too. Later that night, as we sat on the porch, Kiara leaned into me. You think she'll ever feel remorse, she asked. I shook my head. Karen built a cage and called it a neighborhood. She thought if she was loud enough, she could keep people out. Kiara nodded, and we built a garden instead. We stayed up late, listening to the crickets and the soft hum of life. No sirens, no spotlights, just the sound of kids laughing 2 houses over. Today, the garden still stands. The sign is still there, but it's faded now, sun-kissed and weathered, like an old scar that no longer hurts. We keep it there to remember, because this place isn't perfect, but it's ours. And every spring, when the roses bloom again, Kiara adds one more to the bed, each one named for a word we reclaim: dignity, voice, peace, home, and the latest justice, because the only thing stronger than fear is what you do after it leaves. Suck the end.